Hi everyone, I'm Christy with Stitches by Christy. Several months ago I made up this little travel bag to take on a trip with me, and I've taken it on several trips since then. But it's just clear vinyl with some regular vinyl for the accents. And I got a lot of people asking if there was a pattern for it or where they could find it or how they could make it. So I roughly started working on a tutorial for it a couple months ago, and then we've just kind of kicked it into high gear recently. So this will be my first real bag pattern. We are calling it the Talia Take Along Bag, and I have written it to be made with clear vinyl with, you can use clear vinyl or jelly vinyl or just regular vinyl for the accents, but the main part, clear vinyl. But if you hang around to the end of this video, I will also be showing you how to make it a lined version so that you can use your other vinyls or just regular fabric. Some people's machines hate the clear vinyl. And it's not worth the headache to try and do it, but you might still want to make a cute bag. So these instructions won't be in the written tutorial, but it is in this video. So just hang tight to the end and I'll show you how I change it up to do that. It's super easy, okay? So while I've been preparing the tutorial for this, I made a couple others. This one that I made, all of this vinyl is from Oh So Pretty Custom Fabrics. We've got the clear vinyl. This is PVC. They also offer TPU. And then we've got the pink and the black are seashell vinyl, also from Oh So Pretty. I made this one that has clear vinyl for the front. These vinyls are from Backstitch Fabrics, so you can see it's clear for the front. And then for the back, I used a textured PVC, almost like a jelly vinyl, so you can still see through it. It sews up the same way that clear does, but you just get a little bit more opaqueness, I guess. And then the other one I made, this is also all from Oh So Pretty. My accents are their gorgeous embroidery prints. And then the main is their jelly vinyl. So I use that. This was a really nice weight to sew with. Again, it's not completely see-through. Some people don't like all of their items on display, but it still gives you the ease of sewing with it, not having to line it. You can see it's pretty opaque, but it's still really nice. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started. I have my tutorial printed. This is rough right now, so it's going to get changed around, but just to make sure I go in the right order, because I have a really bad habit of just skipping around and throwing things together, and I don't want to confuse you all. So I hope that everything I do makes sense first off. So I've got trying to organize myself. Before we start, I'm going to show you a couple tools that I like to have around. Pretty much all the time I make bags. They're things that are always right here on my table, so I can grab them quickly because I use them a lot. Like I said, we'll start with this. There are no pattern pieces per se to print on this because they are all rectangles. And I know some people really need those pattern pieces, but I feel like printing page after page after page just to have rectangles doesn't really make sense. So I'm going to show you how I cut rectangles and hope that it makes you understand why there are no pattern pieces for these rectangles. And it makes it a little bit easier for you to cut. Okay, so when I cut rectangles, like I said, I'm so used to doing it that I don't need pattern pieces for it. You can see I've got this nice big cutting mat here. And then I keep pattern weights handy. And I usually just line my fabric up, and I always have quilting rulers, okay? This is the big 24-inch one, but I usually keep smaller size is handy just because if you're cutting something smaller to where you don't need the long one, it's a little bit easier to deal with a smaller piece, a smaller ruler. You can hold it down a little bit better. That's just me. One ruler is sufficient. So I've got, these are my 3 most used sizes. I've got a little small 2.5 inch one. Actually, I have 4. This is a 5 inch by 18 inch, no, 14 inch. And then this is the 24 inch by 8 inch one. So those are the 3 that I use the most to cut. And I just lay my pieces out on here, lay the ruler where it needs to be, whatever the measurement is, find the line. And it's really easy when you're using clear vinyl because you can see through it. So don't be afraid to do it. And if your ruler slides a little bit, you can work with it, I promise. So then to cut it, I use just a rotary cutter. I keep 2 different sizes here, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm just doing big straight cuts, I usually grab the bigger one. But if I'm doing curves or anything like that, the smaller one comes in handy. So I, again, keep those both handy. So that's one way to do it. Just go for it. Use your pattern weights, hold them down. I've got a cute little stitch one here. Hold those down. You can also use washi tape to tape like your vinyl if your vinyl's slippery. Put a little bit of washi tape on it. It comes right off. It doesn't leave any residue. So this is a great tool to keep handy at all times. I also like to keep marking pens that can remove. Sometimes I use regular ink pens if it's going to be on the back and you won't see it. So those are always handy. Another way that you can cut pattern pieces, if you need the pattern pieces, you can just draw your rectangles out on a piece of paper and cut those, and then you'll have the sizes that you need every time. It would really just be your first time that you have to measure out everything. Something that a lot of people do is you can get these flexible cutting boards. You can get them at like Dollar Tree, Walmart, Target, anywhere. But they're just thin, flexible like this. And you can draw your pattern pieces on this. And then cut it out. And then you've got something sturdy to use every time. So there are definitely options. I saw someone had posted like some grid paper to use that. So that it already had your 1 inch measurements on there, and you can just cut out using those 1 inch squares. It's really not hard. So don't discount a pattern just because it's new to cut out with the rectangles. Does that make sense? Okay, so some other things that I keep handy most of the time when I'm making bags. I showed you my quilting rulers, but I have, this is another quilting ruler, but it is one that I use all the time. It's a 1 by 8 inch. It comes in really handy when you just need to mark just the small sections. Like if you're making a strap and it's a 2 inch piece and you need to fold it into the center, this is 1 inch, halfway, draw your line. So I keep that handy all the time. This is probably my most used tool besides like scissors and rotary cutters. I think I have 4 of these laying around here somewhere. So something like this small is very awesome to have around, and you will use it. Another thing I like to have when I'm making bags is a seam roller. You can buy expensive fancy ones. This one was made custom. You can see it's got thread. This one was made by Dead Oaks Crafts, and the thread is from Wizardry Stitchery and Crafts. So that was made custom, but you can also just get like one off of Amazon. There's no right or wrong answer to it. I'm a little extra, so I like the shiny things. But these are very handy to have around. They will help you, especially when you're using vinyl, to just roll those seams flat. If you're using double-sided tape, it will help adhere it so that you don't have it like popping up on you as you're trying to sew, because that's annoying, I'm telling you. And then I think the last thing, I mean clips, we all keep clips and things like that around, keep those. And then I think the last thing really is double-sided tape. I use the permanent double-sided tape from Wizardry. This has been my favorite. I can rip it and it leaves a little bit of a jagged edge to be able to pull the paper off. So that's what I use. It comes in 3 different sizes. 1/8 inch is probably my most used just because you can keep it out of the seam allowance. I've got 1/4 inch, and then they also have 1/2 inch. So I keep those within arm's reach at all times when I'm making bags because it does make your life easier. A tip with the double-sided tape, some machines do not like it. I have an industrial and it will plow right through it, but my domestic hates it so much. Which is why 1/8 inch is the most recommended, because you can keep it out of your seam allowance and still get it to hold down. It's super sticky, so it will still hold down everything that you need, but there's less of a chance of hitting it with your needle. So yeah, keep all of those around. I'm trying to think what else. So I guess we will just go ahead and dive right into making this bag. And like I said, stick around to the end because I will show you a bonus feature of how to make it with your other vinyls, fabric, whatever you have, and it will be lined and not the clear bag. Okay, so I have all of my pieces cut out for the bag that we're making today. I won't tell you the measurements here, they're all in the tutorial, so we'll skip over that part and I'll just show you the pieces. So I have 2 pieces of my main clear, okay? And then if you're looking at this bag, you'll see that there's this floral and then there's the mint above it. That's 2 separate pieces, and we're calling those the top and middle contrast pieces. So I have got this 2 pieces for the middle contrast, and then 2 pieces for the top contrast. We have got 2 zipper tabs, a zipper pull, and then I've got zipper tape here. In the tutorial, it calls for a 10.5 inch piece of zipper tape. This is number 5 tape. You can absolutely, from the beginning, cut it at 10.5 inches. When I do it, I like to give myself a little bit extra. So like 11.5 inches, whatever, I usually just chop it off. That gives me just a little bit of wiggle room for when I'm putting the pull on. But like I said, it's not a deal breaker. You can absolutely cut it right at 10.5 inches and get your pull on there, and it's no big deal. I like to keep mine longer and then trim it down after I've got my pull on, just in case I can't get anything on exactly right, or my edges start fraying because I've tried too many times or something. Things always go wrong. So that's just the way I do it. You do whatever suits you. So my zipper tape, and then for the grab handles, you can see it's 2-tone. So we have the main for the grab handles, 2 pieces of those, and then we have 2 of the accent strip. Okay, so that's all of the pieces that we need, and then it's just putting them all together. So before we actually start sewing, I'm gonna go over just a couple little tips, I guess. I don't know. They are in the tutorial also, so just pay attention, because I don't want you to be frustrated that your machine's not handling it well. First off, know your machine's capabilities. If you have never sewn clear vinyl, test out on a scrap piece. You may have to adjust your tension or your stitch length, just so many things. Use a Teflon foot if you have it, or a walking foot. Just practice on it first, because I don't want you to be so excited to sew a bag, use your good stuff, and then your machine hates it. So I always just, if it's not something I've tried before, I practice first, just so I screw up a little tiny scrap instead of a whole bag, right? So yeah, just always know your machine's capabilities. We talked about the 1/8 inch double-sided tape, because you can keep that out of your seam allowance. Like I said, you'll see me as I'm sewing, I just put the stuff wherever because my machine will power through it. I will try my best to stop and remind you to pay attention to where you're putting it, just in case. But yeah, 1/8 inch. So just know what your machine needs. You may need like some oil to run under your foot if it's not gliding properly. There's lots of tips and tricks for that. So just pay attention, and like I said, test it out on scrap first, okay? The other thing is the seam allowance for this whole pattern is 1/4 inch. Top stitch on everything is 1/8 of an inch. I may not mention it specifically as I'm giving instructions, but that's what it is. 1/4 inch for seam allowance, 1/8 inch for top stitch, and also that is in here. So just slow down, read the instructions first, make sure you've practiced, test out your machine's capabilities and see what you need to do before you move on with the real thing, okay? Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we are going to make our zipper. So you're going to take your zipper tape and your pole, and I always keep scissors handy that are not sewing scissors that I can cut zippers with and not worry about it. So to get your pole on, let me see if I can do it from this way. You're going to pull it apart a little bit. Now you'll remember I said that I cut mine just a little bit longer so that I have room to play. If you didn't, that's fine. Don't do this part though, because if you cut it exactly right, you don't have any to cut off. When I'm adding zipper pulls, so I'll show you, let's show you from this side. Okay, so if you cut it exactly at length, if you look really close, you can see the coils, they kind of go one on top of each other all the way down, right? So when you're putting the zipper pull on, if you have it cut straight like that, just pull it apart a little bit and kind of start adding your zipper pull on the coil that's just a little bit higher, okay? And you just kind of have to gently wiggle it on until it's straight. If you left yourself extra room, like I did, I pull it apart a little bit and then I trim one side just a little bit shorter than the other, okay? And then you'll take your zipper pull and you're gonna start, you know, this is awkward doing it this way, sorry. You're gonna start with the side that's higher. You want the rounded part of the zipper head going down, okay? So start with the side that's taller and just get it on there and just kind of push it down until it's lined up with your shorter side, and push your shorter side in there and then just kind of pull it, okay? And leave it in the middle. And then this is where I trim it up straight, trim up that edge completely straight, and then measure it so that you have it at 10.5 inches and cut it from there. Okay, so now I'm going to move over to my sewing machine and we're going to attach our zipper ends. Okay, my zipper tape is ready with the pull on it. It's trimmed down to exactly 10.5 inches. And then one thing I like to do quickly is I just take a lighter, you can use any lighter, and just quickly singe both of the ends. That'll just help it not fray so much as you're using it. And then you're going to take one of your zipper tabs. You're going to place it so that the right side is on top of the coils and match up the ends. And then we're going to sew along that top edge there. And then after you do that one, you'll repeat it with the other side. So you'll have both of those sewn on so that they are right sides together with the zipper coils. So you can see I have them both sewn on, right sides together. Okay, now what we're going to do is we are going to take it, fold it back so that your zipper tape is going to stay straight. You're going to fold the tab back, Okay, and then you're going to take this raw edge and fold it down to the top of the zipper tape and then fold that over. So you have a nice clean finished edge, and you'll top stitch along there and then repeat with the other side also. Okay, so that is that. It's a little bit longer in the back. If you don't like it being longer in the back like that, you can trim it down before you start folding it. Just make sure you leave enough room that you can catch all the layers when you top stitch it, okay? Okay, so our next step is going to be to make the handles, okay? I'm trying to make sure that you can see everything, so I may disappear just a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I would rather you be able to see what I'm doing than to see me. So we are going to start with our exterior handle piece. I keep wanting to call it a strap, but it's not a strap, it's a handle. So we're going to start with one of those, and then this is where I like to use my removable pen. But if you don't have one of those, you can use a regular pen. Just make sure you keep it within that 1/4 inch down at the bottom. So what I like to do, I've got too much stuff here. I like to take my ruler and just on both edges, both ends, I mean, just make you can either, if you're using jelly, I recommend jelly or clear vinyl. I recommend doing this. If you're using like a not see-through vinyl, like I did on this pink and black one, you can draw a line the whole way. Totally up to you. And it's kind of hard because this is a silver pen, but so I just make little marks at both ends. And like I said, it's hard to see because they're silver, but they are there at 3/8 inch in on both ends, and do it for both of your handles too. Now, what we want to do this is where I use the 1/4 inch double-sided tape just because this won't end up in your seam allowance anywhere, but you can, whatever you have. This is just to hold it in place. So just run it straight down the center between those two little marks that you made. Okay, and then I go ahead and peel the paper off. And this is the part because I didn't want to draw a line on the whole thing just because I was nervous that you could see it through the jelly. This is where I will take my ruler and I just place it on here at 3/8 of an inch, and just make sure you don't let it move anywhere. Okay, and then you will take one of your accent pieces and just line it up. So start at one end, make sure it fits in between those two little marks that you just made, and then just run it along your ruler that you have placed there. And if it gets off a little bit, if your ruler slides or whatever, it's easy enough to pull up. You can also use washi tape to hold it down if it is moving around too much on you. That's always a fun option, and that stuff comes in really, really handy. So just kind of carefully press it down where it needs to go, all the way down there. Okay. So you can see I've got that on like that. Okay. Now you will take, definitely use your 1/8 inch double-sided tape for this. Don't try to use 1/4 inch because unless your machine can power through it. I typically run it along the edges, but again, like I said, my machine can handle it. So this time I will run it along the outside edges of my accent piece. And I am pretty sure on, yep, I definitely did. The picture that I used on the tutorial shows it on the outside edge. But if you put it on the very outside edge, if you just put it on the outside edge of the accent piece, you will miss it when you top stitch, or you should, if you have everything nice and straight. Okay, so you can see I've got the tape there and there. So I'm just going to work on one side at a time. And this is where the seam roller comes in really handy. So you just pull your paper off of one side, and you're just going to work from one end to the other and just kind of press it down. I do little sections at a time and then roll. And you'll see, you can see how it wants to just naturally like pop up. The more you roll it, the more it will adhere itself. And if you can't get it to stay down, just use some clips. Put clips on it and then just move them out of the way. I just try to avoid using clips whenever possible, just because every time I remove them, I take a chance of shifting my project. So I try to avoid it whenever possible. But if you have to, you have to. So I'm just going to keep rolling and keep sticking this down, and then we'll come back to the next step. Okay, so I have mine all taped up and folded over. So I'm over at my machine and we're going to top stitch. So you want to just top stitch along both sides, but only on the inside, like where your raw edge is, because the rest will be top stitched to sew it onto your bag. Okay, so go to your machine, top stitch as close as you can get, 1/8 inch, whatever you can get, to just the inside closest to your accent piece. Okay. So I have mine top stitched. I know it's hard to see there, but you can kind of see where I've just gone along those inside edges. And because I'm not super careful when I cut, you can see that my accent piece is longer than my exterior main piece. So I'm just going to trim that up so that everything's nice and straight. It'll just help you out later. So that one is done. I'm going to go do my other strap or handle. I keep calling it a strap. My other handle the exact same way, and then we will make the main part of our bag. Okay, so I have both of my handles done, top stitched just along the inside edges. So we're going to set those aside for now, because now we're going to make the main panel. Okay, so to start with, you want to take one of the middle contrast and the top contrast. And you can either clip these together, or I like to use a little bit of double-sided tape. So you're gonna go along the top edge. If you use double-sided tape, if not, just use clips. That's completely fine and it works. These don't slip all that much. And you're gonna line up right sides together, the top contrast right along the top edge of the middle contrast piece. And do that for both pieces. So they will look like this. They're right sides together. It's hard to tell with this because it's really the same on both sides, but right sides together. And then we're going to go to our machine and we're just going to stitch along with the 1/4 inch seam allowance on both top edges. You can see mine are, well, you can't see it all that great, but mine are stitched together. So we're gonna, now we want to top stitch, but we're gonna kind of mimic like an accent piece that we stitched over top of the main. So we want to fold the middle contrast piece down so that the seam allowance is going down. Okay, and then we're just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch along that one, and then repeat it with your other one also. Okay, so those have been top stitched. You can see the top stitching is on my middle contrast piece from the back. The top is folded down, okay? Drop them both. So they are both finished. Now I'm gonna go over and we're gonna take, add these to the main exterior piece. Okay, so I have the main exterior pieces. Get some of my stuff out of the way here. And same thing, you can either clip or use the 1/8 inch double-sided tape and just right along the top edge there. Oops. And then we're going to take this and place the middle contrast bottom edge along the top edge of this. And it can be kind of hard if you're using clear to see your edges, so just take some extra time, make sure you've got everything lined up nice and neat. Okay, so I've got both of those stuck on like that. Again, clips are completely fine. If you have clips, don't buy double-sided tape just for this. And then we're gonna go to our machine and we're gonna sew both top edges, same as we just did with the other. Okay, now the same thing. We're gonna fold, okay, not exactly the same thing, because this time we're gonna fold the middle piece up towards the top again, so, and then we're gonna top stitch on that middle accent piece. Okay, so from the back, it will look like that. So you'll just have that tiny little bit of the middle that's showing. The other two seam allowances will be going into the middle. Okay, so go ahead and top stitch both edges on your middle accent piece. Okay, so I have then top stitched. And then this is a part where, you know, if I haven't been super precise with my cutting, I just take a ruler and I trim that up. So this is where this tiny little guy comes in handy. Just line that up and straighten your edges up. It's not like something that's going to ruin your bag, but it makes it a lot easier at the end when you're finishing. You don't have to do quite as much trimming up if you just do it now. So I've got those both ready. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to attach the handles onto both sides. So what you need to do first is you need to find the centers of your top and bottom. It'll just make it so much easier to line everything up. Then you'll also already have the top marked for when you do your zipper. So I do that right now. So the way I do it is just fold it in half and pinch right at the center, and take your scissors, and you can just you can use a pen if you want to. Just make sure you keep it within your seam allowance. I take my scissors and make just a tiny little notch. It'll stay within your seam allowance, but then it makes it easy to see where your center is. So I do that at the top and bottom of both pieces. Those are both done, right? Okay, now this is where that washi tape comes in really handy. So I just find a mark on here. I'll grab the 30 this time just because I just grab one that's easy, that I don't have to think. So usually, you know, 10, 20, 30, and line up my notches with that line on the top and bottom. And then just take a little piece of washi tape. And like I said, this is really nice to have just because it won't leave any residue. It comes off easy, it won't stick to your project, and it won't leave any residue, but it'll hold it down for as long as you need it to. Just long enough to keep it from shifting on you. So I just do a little piece at the top and bottom to hold it in place. And then we're going to take, we'll just do one handle at a time. You're going to take your handle and you're going to mark 8.5 inches from your bottom edges. I usually just do it all in one fell swoop and just fold it like this and do it. You can do one at a time, however it works best for you. This is another place you can absolutely use an erasable, heat erase, water soluble, whatever chalk to make your line. That doesn't matter. I'm going to show you this little trick just because sometimes those pen marks do not want to come off, and then you're going to be mad at yourself later. So this is another one. Oh, that's my little ruler. I use my little ruler again. So I just flatten it out. I come over here. I guess I use my ruler if I'm drawing lines. If I'm doing this, it's okay. So I just pull off, if I can find the end. So if you're drawing a line, just use your ruler, line it up like that, draw yourself a nice straight line. I pull off a nice long piece of the washi tape and I just line that up, and you want to make a mark 8.5 inches from the top, or from the ends, I guess. It's my top right now. So I just put this washi tape going straight across both pieces so that I'm lined up with that 8.5 inch mark. okay? And then when you pull it off, you've got that, and then you can just rip that in half, and you've got your marks right where you need them to be, okay? And you can also, because you've got tape hanging off the edges, you can see where your mark would be on the back. If you draw a line, make a mark at that same spot on the back, just so you can see where you need to put your double-sided tape. So then the next step would be just to run a piece of double-sided tape from that tape or mark, or however you marked it, from there down. You don't want to go any higher than that, or you're going to be picking it off later, because it'll show, because this will be our stitch line. Okay, so you can see this is on the back side. Now we want to have 4 inches in between the insides of our strap, or handles. Sorry, there I go with straps again. So I've got my center marks on the 30-inch line. So I want to come over here to the 28. And it's nice to do this with the clear, because like I said, you can see your lines. You can make sure you line it up straight. So you're just going to line it up between that 27 and 28 inch mark line, or wherever you have it set. And just stick it on just like that. And then the same thing on the other side. Go, well, my little piece of tape came off. Hold on. There it is. That's the downside to washi tape. Okay. So same thing on the other side. Go 2 inches over from your, wherever you placed your center mark at. So mine is going at the 32, between that 32 and 33. And like I said, I can see those lines on my mat, and I can just stick it down just like that. And then you can just pull your tape up. And I save those little pieces because we're going to be doing one more. So I just stick them right on the side of my table so I can just grab them again and not waste more tape. So it should be stuck on like that. Now we are going to go over to our machine, and we're going to sew up an outside edge across that line that we just made and back down the other edge, and do that on both sides, and we'll repeat it with the other handle too. Okay, so you can see I've gone up and down, and here, where's it at? Right there is my stitch line, okay? Now this is gonna be our main stress point. So that one stitch line is not enough. So there's a couple options. You can either stick a rivet right below that, which is what I'm going to do, just because I love the looks of rivets. I like bling. But if you don't have rivets, don't buy them for this. You can absolutely don't go up any farther, but go down an inch or so and basically make a box. Draw another line of stitching and then put an X through it. And that's completely fine too. So I'm going to do the other side, attach my handle to the other side, and then I will show you how I put my rivets on, and just a little trick for that, okay? Okay, so now I am going to do the rivets in my handles. Like I said, if you don't have rivets or the tools to set it, don't worry about it. Just sew a box right down there below the stitch line that you've already done. It's not a big deal. But I'm going to do rivets in mine. So I already have my holes punched in it. I like to, on clear vinyl, I like just a little bit extra to stabilize it. But because it's raw back here, you want it to look nice too. Typically inside a bag, I would just use like Peltex or a scrap of whatever vinyl I had wherever, because it's hidden by the lining. But these aren't. So I always take scraps of whatever I'm using. In this case, it was this pretty mint color. And I just cut out little circles, 4 of them, 1 for each rivet hole to go. So I'm going to poke a rivet through. I'm going to add one of these, and if you need to build it up more, just if your post is too long or whatever, you can just do a few layers of the vinyl, whatever you need to. So I just poke it through like that, and then I have a cam press to set it with. I highly recommend one if you don't have one, and if you do plan on making a lot of bags, it's definitely worth the purchase. So I'm just going to go through all 4 the same way, making sure I put one of these little stabilizer pieces on the back. So that side is done. And honestly, I'm not sure if that stabilizer piece is needed or not, but it gives me peace of mind. So in my mind, it is needed. But, you know, feel free to question me on that, because I don't know. There are people out there who know way more than I do. But that's the way I do it. So that's what we're doing in this. Okay. So those are both done. Okay. So our next step is going to be to create little corners on both of our pieces. This is where my little ruler comes in handy, this little 2.5 inch one. So I just cut 1.5 inch squares out of each corner. So I just line this up 1.5 inch each way, and then I use my little rotary cutter. You can trace it, you can use scissors, however works best for you, to where you just have that 1.5 inch square from each side. That is what both pieces will look like. You can see the square cut out of the corner there. Bonus, I love it when pattern placement works out, even when I don't try. Isn't that cute? Perfectly centered right there. So that is that. Now we'll move on to the next step. So next you need to have both of your exterior pieces and the zipper that you created. And this is where I like to have some sort of chalk, or this is a silver marking pen, something that you can hide. Like I'm using a black zipper, so a black or blue pen is not going to show up. So I love the silver pen for this. So we just want to pinch it in half. We're going to find the center. Do not make notches in zipper tape like you did on this. Some will hold up fine to it, but some will just fray to pieces, and you're gonna hate yourself because it won't do it until after your bag's put together. It's just the way it works. So I just fold it in half, pinch to find the center, and then I do it on the back side. You can do it on the front side if you want. It makes it easier to see on the back side because you're putting them right sides together. Just make sure wherever you put it, it's within the seam allowance. Don't make a big long line. So I just basically make just on both edges. You see it? Just enough so I can see where it's at. Okay. Now we are going to use our double-sided tape. Again, if you don't want to use the double-sided tape, that's fine. Just use lots of clips. Just make sure nothing slides around because you want it to stay pretty well lined up, or you're going to have a wavy zipper or an off-center zipper or whatever. So we're going to take our double-sided tape, and on the top side of the zipper, the side with the coils, we're just going to run it. I go ahead and just run it on both sides, both edges right now. You don't need them both right this second, but you will eventually, so I just saved myself a step. Okay, so we got zipper tape on both edges. Now take one of your exterior pieces, and it's kind of awkward because you have to hold the handle down out of the way, but it is what it is. So you're going to just pull off one side of the paper backing on the double-sided tape, just one, and then you're going to match up that center mark that you just made with the notch that you made on the main piece. They're going to be right sides together. So your main piece will be facing up, your zipper will be facing down, and just go all along the edge and match up the edge of the zipper to the edge of your vinyl piece. And you will more than likely have to move your zipper pull out of the way as you're sewing. So just do that. Try and keep everything nice and straight. You can see I've got mine stuck on there. So I'm going to go to my machine, and I'm just going to sew with the 1/4 inch seam allowance just where the zipper is. You don't need to go all the way to the edges. It doesn't really make sense to do that. You can if you want, but it doesn't make sense to. This is where you want to try really hard to keep your stitches straight. If you have a zipper foot, now's a good time to use it. Otherwise, you can draw a line for your seam allowance if that helps keep you straight, because if you don't keep a straight line, that's when you end up with the wavy zipper. We've all seen them. We've probably all done them. I know that I have plenty of times, but that's the most important part. On your zipper, keep your line straight. So go to your machine and sew that first just on the zipper part at a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, one thing that I will say now while I'm thinking about it, because from this point out it will be very important, you either want to backstitch at the start and stop of everything. That includes on this zipper, when you're sewing up the sides. From this point on, backstitching is pretty important. There is an alternative to backstitching though. You can also not backstitch because vinyl is kind of particular, we'll just say. And if you put, it's plastic, you know, so if you put too many holes in it, there's a better chance of you perforating it. So on vinyl, like I said, feel free to backstitch if that's what works best for you. I like to leave long tails, and I pull them to the back side and knot them off and then cinch the ends so that they kind of melt and can't undo. There are parts that I definitely do a couple back stitches, and that will be when we're sewing it all together up on the top by where the zipper is. I do a couple back stitches there, and then I tie them off too, just because that's where you're going to get the most pull. But everywhere else, I leave long tails. But again, you could either leave long tails and pull them to the back and tie them off, or you can back stitch a couple stitches, but I wouldn't go more than like 2 or 3 stitches. Don't go super far because you don't want to perforate a lot. Okay, so to your machine, sew that with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then we will top stitch it. Okay, so I have mine sewn, and I left my long threads so I can show you how I tie them off. So if you just gently, I'm sorry if this is hard to see, I know my fingers are on the way. If you just give the one on the back side a little tug, it will pull through just a little tiny loop, and then I use a stiletto and just pull on that loop, and it'll pull both threads to one side, and then you just tie it, cut it off short, and cinch it. Sorry, I know you can't see this part. I can't hold it up and tie the knot. Okay, so you can see I've knotted it, and then I'll just trim it down a little bit, and again use my lighter and cinch it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and repeat that on the other side. Okay, so now that we have the zipper sewn in on that side, we're going to take it and we're going to press basically the main portion down. So we want, it's so hard to show you, but we want the zipper and the fabric, the seam allowance, pointing down to the bottom, and we're just going to top stitch right along there. If you've got a fabric, a vinyl that doesn't want to fold super easily, a little bit of double-sided tape in there will help. I'm just going to hold it and finger press as I go. So we're just going to top stitch 1/8 inch right there. Oops, sorry. Right there by the zipper. Okay, so you can see mine is top stitched. You just have to move the zipper out of the way whenever you need to. Now we're gonna go and we're gonna do the exact same process, but on the other side. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then we'll come back and we will finish it up. Okay, so I have my zipper sewn in, okay, on both sides. We have our corners open. Now we are going to fold it so that it's right sides together. You don't have to. I like to, just because I like my like seams and the handles to stay lined up. But I use a little bit of double-sided tape just on one side, on one half of it, on the 3 straight sides. You don't have to worry about the corners or anything else, but just a little bit will help keep those points that you don't want to shift where they're supposed to be. Okay, so after you have that, just go ahead and remove your backing. Okay, when you fold it, I like to start at our contrast pieces and match those up, because those will be the most noticeable, because it's right there on the side. I also, even if I'm using double-sided tape, I still use clips, just to make sure nothing shifts from where I want it to. So go all the way down that side. And then do the same thing on the other side. Start with your contrast pieces, and you'll kind of pinch the zipper down so that you'll see it just kind of naturally falls where it needs to be. And again, clips there. The tape adds just a little bit of challenge, just because it wants to stick all over the place, and you sometimes have to fight with it, but in my opinion, it's worth it in the end. Okay, then you'll come down to the bottom and match up where your handles are first. And clip, and then kind of go between those 2 spots. and line everything up like you need it to. Okay, so now what we're gonna do, this is a part where it's very important to either backstitch. I always backstitch at the top, just a couple stitches here, just because that's where it gets the most pull, like when you're turning it and stuff and you don't want it to rip. Once you get to here, 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 and here, those four by the corners, you can either backstitch a couple stitches, or I leave my tails long, and then when I pinch it together, I tie them up together. I don't know, it's a me thing. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it works for me. So that's how I'm going to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start at one top edge, go down the side at your 1/4 inch, along the bottom, back up the other side, back stitching here and here, of course. And then I flip it over and go from the opposite direction just to the outside edge of your first stitch line. So like 1/8 of an inch or less, just right beside it gives a extra row of stitching, which means a little bit extra security if it starts pulling apart a little bit. So you'll have 2 rows of stitching on all 3 of those sides. Okay, so I have sewn around all 3 sides. Let's see if I can find, you can see I've got a double row stitching all the way around. I left tails here. Okay, so I'm going to show you how I deal with those. Let me move this camera just a smidge. Okay, this is a good stopping point though. I leave these edges raw. I just trim them up nice and straight. I singe off any threads that are hanging off the edges. It doesn't bother me because this clear vinyl doesn't fray. You can't really see it through anything. But if you want to bind it, if you don't like the look of the raw edge, now is the time to go ahead and do binding on these 3 sides. Just run it straight on all 3 of those sides before you get to where you're boxing the corner. Okay, I am going to skip that part. So if anyone needs help with binding, just message me or something and I will walk you through how to do it. But for now, I'm just going to skip it. So our next step is you're going to reach into these corners that you have cut open and you're going to kind of pull your bag out. And it can be, clear vinyl can be a little bit difficult to work with. So if you are struggling to get it to go where you need it to, just blast it with a hairdryer. It'll soften it up enough to make it go where you need it to go. So you're just going to pinch the corners in, and you're going to line up your bottom seam allowance and your side seam allowance, okay? And just kind of nest those, push one seam allowance one way and one the opposite direction. And I put a couple clips just to hold it in place. If you left the long tails like I did, just make sure as you're sewing you hold them out of the way because we're going to tie those up later. And you'll do that. So again, 2 rows of stitches. You want double stitching on everywhere you do, or on all of this part, just because it will get a lot of strain on those seams. So we're going to pinch both sides and sew along both of those corners with a double stitch, or 8 1/4 inch, like just like we did on the other 3 sides. Okay, so I have one side done here. I've got my double row stitching going across. I've got my tails on each end. Again, if you back stitch, that's fine too. So now I'm gonna deal with these. If you didn't back stitch, just skip over this part. So I cut them, so I have 4 separate, and then I separate the threads and I just knot them. This is hard to show you guys. I just knot, okay, I'm gonna do it down here, sorry. Let's see. There we go. So I just separate them and knot all of them together. And then again, it may just be in my head, but I feel like that just gives it a little extra strength at that seam. And you don't have to worry quite so much about them pulling apart. So I just knot them, trim them off, and then use my lighter again to singe them. Melt it down pretty small. And then do the same thing on your sides. Just knot those thread tails. Again, if you've back stitched at them, you don't need to do this part. This is just for if you left tails hanging. And then while I'm on this part, this is when I usually just take my lighter and I go around any extra threads that may be hanging out and just kind of burn those off a little bit, just so it looks prettier inside. So you can see, like here by my handles, I've got some, so I just take the lighter. You can trim them down if they're really long, but typically just a lighter is all you need to do. Okay, so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do this other side, and then we will finish this up. Okay, so I have it all sewn up. This is really the end of it. Now we just need to turn it. Again, clear vinyl can be kind of stiff sometimes. All vinyl, really. This is a good trick for any vinyl. If you can't get it to turn, just blast it with your hairdryer. It will get super soft, almost melted feeling. But it makes it to where you can turn it. So I'm gonna have to do that with mine. I'm not gonna run the hairdryer while I'm talking to you because that would just be annoying. So I'm gonna go use my hairdryer, soften this up, and then I will be back to show you the finished. Okay, I am back. I have blasted this with some heat from my hairdryer. And then I've just turned it right sides out, and just make sure you poke down in the corners. Very good. And then you can even use more heat to get any of the wrinkles and creases out. You also want to go into the corners by the zippers and use your fingers and press those corners out. Make those look nice and tidy. Zip it up, and it is done. Okay, so there is the clear version, and if you stay tuned for just a minute, I will show you how we do the not clear version for those of you that want to use your regular vinyl or fabric, whatever you want to use. So this version will be lined. It will obviously take more materials, but it's super easy to do, so stay tuned for that. Okay, so for those of you that don't like to sew clear vinyl, but you still want to make this bag, it is so easy to adjust it to make it using your favorite non-clear materials. I'm using vinyl just because I like using vinyl, but you can use your cotton spandex, you can use quilting cotton. You're just gonna, on fabrics, you're going to want interfacing on them. I would not try to make it without interfacing. For my lining, again, you can use, I wouldn't use cotton spandex on the lining, but quilting cotton would be fine. Any woven, again, you're going to want interfacing on that. You can also use waterproof canvas or water resistant canvas, which is what I'm using. So basically, it's gonna be the same all of the steps. I already have my zipper is made, same as before. My handles are made, same as before. I have made my front panels, same as before. The only difference is now you're also going to cut your lining fabric. I used waterproof canvas, and you're gonna just cut it the same size as this. So my pieces ended up being like 10 7/8 by 12 inches. So I typically, just in case I don't get seam allowance exact or whatever, I typically just lay this piece on top of my lining fabric and cut it the same. Instead of trying to go by a measurement. That's the easiest way to do it, just to make sure if you didn't get something lined up exactly. It happens, believe me, more often than you think. But, so then that way you have that. I have marked the center tops and bottoms just like I did before, and do the same on here. So we basically just need to attach everything the same as we did before, with one obvious difference. So I'm gonna go ahead and do my handles the same way. I'm just gonna shut the camera off while I do all of this, instead of, you know, making this video super long, because you already saw how we do all that. That is all gonna be the same. You're gonna make the line 8.5 inches from the bottom, from the ends, do everything the same as we just did, and then I will come back and show you how we do the zipper, so that you can see the only difference. The only difference in sewing will be the end. Okay, so I will be right back. Okay, so I am back. I have sewn the handles onto these. Okay, so what I'm gonna do next is, I already have the notches, just like we did before, in the top and bottom centers of this. I've got my corners cut out. I'm going to do the same thing we did before with the zipper and find the center of that. Everything is basically the same to do this. Just one little difference. Not hard at all. Okay. So what we're going to do is you're going to use your double-sided tape, and we're basically going to you're going to put your lining piece face up on the table, a piece of double-sided tape or clips if you just choose to do that. Okay, so I've got my lining piece, the center of my zipper tape lined up with that center notch on there, zipper face up again. And because I'm using tape, I don't baste it. If I was only clipping, I would baste my zipper on just so that it doesn't shift around on me. But since I've got plenty of tape on here, it's not going to move anywhere, so I just do everything all at once. And then you'll add more tape on the top layer, and this time, feel your backing off, this time you'll take one of your exterior pieces and line it up at the top. So before we just had the tape and the exterior piece, where this time we've added the lining into it. So we have the zipper tape sandwiched in between the two. Okay, so we're going to go to our machine and we're going to just stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance along the zipper, just like we did before. Okay, I have mine stitched together so that it's right sides together. This zipper is sandwiched in between. Now we're going to top stitch this, but I only want to top stitch through the exterior. So I'm going to separate it this way with the seam allowance pushed down towards the main so that it looks like this from the back. So you want the zipper seam allowance going towards the main. And we're just going to top stitch right along there. Okay, so I have that top stitched only through the exterior, and then I will just kind of finger press the lining down out of the way. The reason for only stitching through the exterior is to just cut down the bulk here when you sew the final. Because if you top stitch through that, you're going to have these two layers attached. So if you only sew through the one, it will be a lot less bulky and easier to turn, and you'll get a cleaner edge there. So now I'm just going to repeat the same thing with both of the other pieces on the other edge. Okay, so I have them sewn together. I have the zippers in. I have finger pressed the linings to the right side. Not that that matters, but okay, now you want to open your zipper up. If you forgot to open it up on the clear one, it wasn't that difficult to push it open because there wasn't a lining. When you have the lining, it's a little more difficult to get to. It can still be done if you forget to open it, but it's a great time to stop and open your zipper right now. Now we're going to do the same as we did before. I'm going to add double-sided tape onto my vinyl side just to help me hold everything where I want it to be. So we're going to do the same thing. Line up your exterior sides, and then you're going to line up your lining pieces. It's going to be the same. We're going to stitch the same as we did before, matching up seams just the same way we did before. There's just one small difference, something that you have to remember to do. So what we're going to do is match up your exterior pieces first. Same thing, you're going to pinch the zipper towards the exterior. We are going to match up your contrast pieces where those seams are first, and then just go right down to the bottom. Same thing over here. Same thing with the bottom, match up your handles first and go from there. Okay, now where it's different, we have it like this, so we want to match up the lining pieces also. The difference with the lining, well, first off, you don't have to do 2 rows of stitches on your lining fabric. I would still do it if you're using vinyl for the exterior. If you're using fabric for the exterior, you don't need 2 rows of stitching. 1 would be sufficient. But if you are using vinyl, I would do 2. Then the other difference here is once you get to the bottom edge, the sides will be the same. You'll be sewing them all the way around. Once you get to the bottom edge, you're going to want to leave a hole to turn the bag through. Okay, so I typically just sew a couple inches here, and make sure you backstitch on those parts because you're going to be pulling the entire bag through this section here. Okay, so I start on one, backstitch, go all the way around, and then end over here and backstitch. Okay, so I'm going to go to my machine. I'm going to do that first, and then I will come back and show you how to finish it up. Okay, so I have sewn all the way around this. I've got 2 rows of stitching. You can't see it because it's white thread, but there's 2 rows of stitching. There, you can see it. On the vinyl part, just 1 on the waterproof canvas. I have left a hole here to turn it. And now we're going to do just like we did before, where we pinched all of the corners out and line those seams up. But this time we'll just have 4 of them to do instead of 2. So I'll just go through, pinch all of these. Same thing, sew them the same way you did before. Same way I showed you on the clear vinyl section. All 4 like that. And then we'll be ready to turn it. Okay, so I have my corners all boxed, all 4 of them. So now we're gonna carefully, I did not tie this one. We're gonna carefully reach inside and pull it through the opening. Just do it carefully because you backstitched, or you should have, and it should be fine, but you know, we're going to be mad at ourselves if we rip it at this point. And again, if you're using vinyl and it's too stiff and it's hard to turn, just blast it with your hairdryer. The heat will soften it right up. It doesn't soften it like it does the clear vinyl, but it softens it enough to where you can turn it. So I'm going to see if I can get this one turned without heat, but I may have to stop to go get my hairdryer. We'll see. So then after we have this all turned, then the only thing to do is to close up the hole that we left and tuck it all inside nice and neat. And I don't know if I mentioned or not, but this gorgeous vinyl is one of the embroidery prints from Oh So Pretty. I think they're my new favorites. They're so gorgeous and they look so realistic. They look like hand embroidery. And then to pair them with the green is a linen print. They're lovely. So it's kind of, it's a neutral, but not a neutral. Because I like fun things, so you know. Okay, so you want to just get in there and make sure you poke out all the corners. This part is nothing new. Same thing here by the zipper ends. Now, since you do have a lining, it does take just a little bit more work. It's not quite as easy as doing. Let me grab a turning tool. So I keep chopsticks work. There's turning tools that I have that came in like boxes of, what do you call it? Like, not batting, like pillow fluff stuff. I can't even think what I'm trying to say. But just use something to get up in there. And then if you need to, this one poked out pretty nicely. But you can use this to go like underneath your tab. It'll just, there's a tiny little hole there that you can like poke it through there. And then repeat it with your other side. This right here is probably the hardest part of the whole bag. Just because those corners are, they're kind of thick. Jeez. But once you get them, they do look pretty. Just be careful with whatever turning tools you're using that you don't poke all the way through, so you're not going to be a happy camper. Okay, nice little... Okay, so you can see mine. Okay, so now you want to take the lining and same thing, just poke your corners out just so it sits where you want it to. And then we're going to just kind of fold this opening in. It should naturally fall where it's supposed to just because you started and stopped your seam allowance there at the corners. So it you shouldn't have to stop and think too much about if you're folding it in enough. So I just usually kind of like pull it tight and it'll fold in and then just pinch it the rest of the way. Okay, so I've got that all clip closed, I'm going to take it to my machine and I'm just going to top stitch along that to close it up, and then our bag will be basically done. Okay, there is my top stitch just to close it. Now I'm just going to push this lining down inside the bag. And same thing, like waterproof canvas has that like plastic coating on the back of it, so if it gets a little bit stiff to tuck in, you can also blast that with a hairdryer and it'll soften it up for long enough for you to work with it, and then it'll go right back to its shape. Okay, so you can see that tucks all down in there, and it won't, I mean, especially once you start putting things in it, with it not being top stitched, it won't pull out just because of the way the zipper ends are on top of it. So keep it closed. So I've got this one and this one were the two that we just made today. So I hope that you all have loved sewing this pattern. Tell all your friends about it, and let me know what else you want to see in the future. Thank you, and bye.